Okay, we are at 12:30 and we are ready to start this webinar on sustainability from Bayer, and with a really sexy title, What Does Sex Have to Do with Sustainability? I have invited 3 colleagues whom I will discuss this issue with, how we can become more sustainable in family planning. But before I let them in, I would like to say a few words on what is sustainability and what is social sustainability, and who am I? My name is Inger Hildingsen, and I am Sales and Marketing Manager for Women Health in Scandinavia, and I have a huge interest in sustainability, and especially in family planning. So first, I would like to say a few words on what is sustainable development. And I think sustainable development really consists of 3 overlapping circles, where one is environmental, which we hear mostly about, but one is also social and one is economical. So I think that today we would discuss this social development and social sustainable, and the intertwining sector in the middle is really sustainable development. Because we know that family planning is important, or sexual and reproductive health and rights. Why is that important? Well, it is important, and I found a quote from Hans Rosling, professor, well known in Sweden, I think worldwide pretty known, where he kind of puts it all together, that when he says in his book Factfulness that women who are educated and have informed about and access to contraceptives can actually have a dream of having the child that she wants, and as many children as she would like, who are well educated and part of society. Because we know that 44% of all pregnancies worldwide are unplanned. They are higher in low and middle income countries. We also know that unplanned pregnancies can be reduced by 2/3 if women have access to family planning and contraception. So this is really why we do this. So in this invitation, I stated a goal that we have for Bayer for Agenda 2030. With our commitment, we will want to provide access to 100 million women with contraceptives in low and middle income countries. So the question is, why is Bayer doing this? What are we doing, and how are we actually doing this? And for this, I have invited 2 speakers, 2 of my colleagues, one based in Berlin. This is Frank Strelov, who will talk about sustainability. He's globally responsible for that. And also Mildred Natapita, who is responsible for sustainability in Sub-Saharan Africa, who is based in Nairobi. So I turn over to you, Frank, to start, and you will have some help with Mildred to discuss this with you. So please.
Yeah, thank you, Inga, for having us today here on this interesting short webinar. I'd like to give you a little bit of context what sustainability and family planning has to do with each other, and why we are where we're coming from and where we are getting to. So I will try to give you a little bit of perspective where we started. Actually, family planning is something we as Bayer supported already for many, many years. And it goes back to the legacy of the sharing company back in the 60s, that Bayer was supporting USAID and UNFPA with providing contraceptives to low and middle income countries. I would try to move the slides, but it doesn't work. So please help me a little bit with that. So there are a couple of basic elements you would need if you want to do development aid in the area of sexual and reproductive rights and medicine. There's awareness, of course. In the 60s, awareness was not very big for contraception, and particularly for hormonal contraception. That was a time when my father was working at the sharing lab, in the hormone lab as a lab worker. And my family, my mother and my father were not very aware of that. So I came as a surprise to them, which was hopefully a good surprise. But sometimes it's not such a good surprise, as you know. Nowadays, I would say that awareness is a component which has to be complemented with political will in the countries to support their population with health and health services, including family planning. Of course, the products need to be available. That's what Bayer does and did already in the past. And they need to be affordable. That's why we provided them for a very low price, a social price to the United Nations and to other NGOs and organizations. That was the paradigm of the 60s and 70s to talk about population growth and how we can contain that. Next slide, please. When we were looking into our sustainability program, we refreshed it 2.5 years back, looking into what we are looking for when we talk about sustainability. We were showing out to ourselves that we talk about impact. It's not about social responsibility alone. That certainly is an aspect, but we want to see what our operations, as our commercial operations as a company, what sort of impact do they have? And if we looked into the pharma division of Bayer, we saw that one of the endeavors of the biggest impact we might generate comes from family planning. And we ask ourselves, are we doing enough? And the answer was clearly no. There is a lot of need in low and middle income countries to support family planning, not so much and only because of the population growth, but particularly because of the choices women have to reach gender equality, which they are far away from in many, many countries. And access to family planning should be a human right. It is a human right, but it's not available for everybody in the world. So what can we do to improve that? We knew that in the scope of products we provide to United Nations and others, the long-acting contraceptives are very much sought after. And actually, our production capacity was not sufficient to support the demand which was requested from the ecosystem, from the international communities. So that was a pain point which we easily could identify. We also saw that in the commercial markets where we operate, we need to have a closer look into the affordability of our products. So having a better access might also mean to have a more flexible pricing according to the, let's say, gross national income of a country. So finally, we were thinking that we were a little bit in a silo. So accelerating the partnerships we have will certainly support the overall program. So that's why we initiated different partnerships and initiatives along these lines. Next slides, please. And started to look into where we can find the women we can support. In the partnership area, it's about low resource settings, where you have a lot of people in a narrow space. You can reach them quite easily, but the availability and access to health services is very slim in many areas. Rural areas, hard to reach. Humanitarian settings, very much ignored. The digital space is also a kind of room which we have to discover more. Next slide, please. So if you look into that one, of course, we did the math for that, and that's why we came up with a 100 million objective. That is a little bit in line with the SDGs 2030 of United Nations. And you can see from this bar chart that with the products we want to provide to a larger extent to the international community, we might come from the nowadays level of 40 million women who already use Bayer contraceptives worldwide in the low and middle income countries. We want to come to 100 million by two steps, providing our own products to a large extent, and having more partnerships and capacity building, supporting programs which make contraceptives, regardless of what the supplier is, available to women in low and middle income countries. Next slide, please. Here is just a selection of a couple of partners which we are closely working together now, both in the supply area as in the capacity building area. What that means in reality and how this feels on the ground, I would ask Mildred. Mildred is in my team. She is located in Nairobi, and she can tell you, as you say, from the horse's mouth, how this works. Mildred.
Yes, thank you so very much, Frank. I think we will go to the next slide where we would see our engagement with the Challenge Initiative. The Challenge Initiative really is a demand-driven focused initiative where we engage with government directly. They decide that they need help, and the Challenge Initiative comes in and helps them in capacity building, helps them in pushing for demand generation, helps them in also building capacity in terms of knowledge transfer. It is a voluntary initiative, so governments have to decide that they also want to involve their budget in this conversation. In the next slide, you would see the number of countries that we have been able to engage in. So whether you're looking at cities, usually within the urban poor communities, we have about 95 cities that are currently on the Challenge Initiative that are also putting in their own local budget, which is very innovative when it comes to developmental aid and investments. Over $100 million has been invested from these local communities to match funds coming in from the Challenge Initiatives. And of course, you see a large population of over 90 million that are involved within this, and other donors, of course, who come in to support the Challenge Initiative. The lot of work that we do on the field, of course, these are high impact interventions. And I look at it and I'm very passionate, about family planning, because this is a very personal story for me, a story that really is the story of my mother, who was born into a very small farming community. She had a father who was a goat herder, and surprisingly, the first woman from her community to go to school. At that time, she was an adolescent, they were trying to become women. Many girls got pregnant and were expulsed from school. Unfortunately, a reality still today. But she was able to stay the course in school and was able to finish because she had access to family planning. In her 70s, she still says that women deserve the right to have access to information, to services, to products that can help them manage the sizes of their families. And this is why I think I'm passionate about it, that as a company, we continue to engage with communities, with governments, to bring life-saving interventions and continue to provide contraceptives and family planning as a social umbrella that can help strengthen families and make them economically viable for themselves. Once more, thank you so much for having me. I will hand it back to you.
So now I'm turning back to the Nordics and to Finland, Turku, where I have Miriam. Miriam, you are president and CEO of Bayer in the Nordics, and I'm very happy to have you here. And I wonder, how does this, what we heard from Africa and what's happening there, how does that relate back to Turku, Finland?
Well, Inga, thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me to join this session today. And having heard what the two colleagues just said, I must say it makes me really very, proud on the one hand, but also humble at the same time, listening to, what impact we make as a company, and of course in collaboration with others across the world. And to hear you, Frank, talking about this bigger impact, that I must say gives us here in the Nordics such a strong feeling of purpose. And also it makes me super happy to know that we have like great colleagues like you, Mildred, who really dedicate all their passion and efforts in making our 100 million women target come true and real. So kudos to you as well, Mildred. For me, all of that clearly shows how we are all connected, and now regardless of the location, but how we are connected with these UN Sustainability Development Goals, and we all support, and all in our own way and through our own operations, Bayer's vision of health for all, hunger for none. And I'm here now talking on behalf of the whole Bayer Nordic region, which includes Scandinavia, so Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and Iceland, Finland, and also the 3 Baltic countries. And we all contribute and do our bit for a sustainable future. But to dig deeper into the women's health, I would like to highlight how we in the Nordics, and to be now more precise, in Turku in Finland relate to sustainability and actually to today's topic. And as had been mentioned earlier by Frank, we have, we have this huge topic ongoing with sustainable innovation. And in that regard, we need to speed up. And we have actually here in Finland recently announced a huge investment of 250 million, which is aiming at 1, modernizing our current production site for contraceptives, and 2nd, to build a brand new production facility to actually respond to the future needs, which Frank just talked about. And this is a very concrete example for us how sustainability is really at the core also of our business strategy. And well, actually what we do here in Finland, we have dubbed Turku here internally as the contraceptive capital of the world. We have manufactured here the contraceptives for over 40 years and export the products to over 130 countries around the world. And I have to add not only to low and middle income countries, but also across the globe.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Today we focused on low and middle income countries. Like you said, you are exporting to the rest of the world, which is interesting and fantastic. And family planning is not only important in low and middle income countries, it's important wherever you're based. And our Nordic countries, as you mentioned, we are really in the forefront when it comes to gender equality. And our prime ministers have taken a stand for women's rights. So it's really a great fit that Finland has a role in this Bayer Global Sustainability Program. And what are your reflections concerning that?
Well, yes, absolutely. I fully agree. And access to family planning and to contraception, I think, is one of the cornerstones of gender equality. And it has certainly played a crucial part supporting the development of our societies across the world, and in particular, I must say, here in the Nordics. And the Nordic region, whatever country you take, has long traditions, and I really see that a strong legacy in gender equality. There's always room for improvement, but all in all, this region is very, very strong in that. And I'm also, happy to say that we as a company are not the only ones here in the Nordic region, of course, advocating for girls and women's rights and also sexual reproductive health. You pointed out the governments in this region have been successful in building an equal society. They have implemented policies to make, for example, the working life much more inclusive for women. And you see the picture here. So we have also seen women taking an active and even a leading role in political decision making. And let's wait and see how that picture will look like maybe in a couple of days. And I think this is really also important as you should not underestimate the power of positive role models also for the younger generations, which still have the whole life before them. And just to give you another concrete example, in 2014, Sweden became the first country in the world to launch a feminist foreign policy. And this means really applying a systematic gender equality perspective throughout the whole foreign policy agenda. And the Nordic governments have for a long time made the safeguarding of girls and women's rights one of their foreign policy priorities. And actually, I mean, looking at that from our perspective, we see that this is very well aligned with Bayer's global goals related to women's health and contraception. And also, I mean, just to add that many of the NGOs, of course, doing a perfect and great job in this area as well, highlighting the equal rights. I would like to share with you, well, actually one very concrete and I think great example, and that is an initiative called Girls Take Over from the NGO Plan International. And what it means is that actually next week there will be a 17-year-old girl named Ada. She will take over my role and my leadership for the Bayer Nordic organization for a day. And this is a concept which is developed by Plan International, which builds awareness for girls and women's participation in the society. And I'm not the only leader to participate in that here in Finland. And actually, I'm very honored to be in prominent company with the Finnish president, Sauli Niinistö, and also the chief editor of Yle, the Finnish national broadcast agency, who will also be replaced by girls for one day. So you can imagine that I'm quite excited about this one. And I think, yeah, we all agree that a sustainable and also economically stable future that is not created without the full involvement of the whole society. And that clearly involves, of course, women. And you can't start early enough.
Thank you. Wow, that was a surprise to me. Super interesting to hear this initiative. In the beginning, I showed a slide on sustainability and the 3 circles. And one of the circles being the environment. And of course, that really is a question for you, Miriam, who is responsible for this big factory in Turku, Finland, the capital of contraceptives. How does it impact that? And what is Bayer doing when it comes to climate change?
Yeah, I think, I mean, sustainability should be really in the core of everybody's actions to protect the planet and preserve also the quality of life of all of us on it. And I must say, luckily now, everybody has understood the urgency that we need to tackle the challenges we face here, like climate change. And this needs to be supported by everybody, whether individuals, governments, companies, or other stakeholders. So really the whole society needs to do something there. And I mean, I also feel that everybody, whether it's here now employees or customers, that they really expect us also to take action and take up our own responsibility in that regard. Regarding the climate change and our carbon footprint, this is of course something where we aim to continuously also reduce the greenhouse gas emissions within our company, but also along our entire value chain. And again, in accordance with the UN sustainability goals, and in particular also the Paris Agreement, which limits the global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And this fits very nicely also to what we aim at. So our Our goal for this decade here is now that we want to become climate neutral by the year 2030 in our own operations. And again, one very concrete example, which I think is important also to highlight that things are happening, that Bayer in Finland, and that includes the production site, which I talked about at the beginning. We initiated there extensive measures in the last year, and with that, we're able to reduce our carbon dioxide emissions by 80%, so 80, through just switching our energy consumption to renewable energy. And I mean, this is one thing, and to sum it up, it's absolutely clear that we all need to collaborate across the borders to find now solutions to tackle these huge challenges. And as said, this concerns each of us individually, but also the society, our employees, the companies, and other stakeholders as well. And we need to do it now.
Absolutely. Thank you, Miriam, and thank you. Extremely comforting to know that things are happening when it comes to the climate change issue as well. I will pause you here. I would like you to give some closing remarks in the end. But before that, I will allow some questions have come in. We've had one question that I would like to address to Mildred. I think it's a good question. And Mildred, it says here, how can family planning become more equal and not only a question for women? What's your take on that?
Yes, so to be honest, through our strength of partnerships, we have been involving everybody in the conversation. So it is a young boys conversation too. We just ran a digital campaign in Nigeria, which was heavily focused on both the females and male communications. And we believe that it has to be, because in Africa, the hurdles that women have to overcome to have access to family planning are limited in culture, very patriarchal cultures. They're limited in religion. So you have to also get religious leaders involved. They're limited even with community leaders. So it has to be a holistic approach, really, to increase access and access for everybody. But of course, the focus is that we must empower our girls and women to have access to family planning.
And thank you. I also have a question for Frank. We are now in 2021. There's 9 years left. How far have we come? You mentioned some of that in one of your slides, but how far have we come, and how stretched is this goal of 100 million?
Yeah, thanks for that question. It's not an easy goal. It's a, in the beginning, we didn't call it a goal, we called it a challenge, because it brings us absolutely out of the comfort zone, both to the level of investment we need to make and the level of effort we have to make this happen. The COVID crisis hasn't been playing in our hands, of course, but nevertheless, we could see that due to our activities in the year 2020, we were able to provide 2 million women more with contraceptives than in the year 2019. And a great share of that coming from the Finnish installations running night shifts and working hard to make this happen.
Yeah, thank you. Now we are in the end of this webinar, and I would like to maybe give you an opportunity to make some closing remarks, maybe in 1 or 2 sentences, starting with you, Frank. What do you think needs to be done to get this going?
What the crucial point, which both Mildred and Miriam pointed out, is partnerships. We need to make sure that we are not alone on the world, that we address this planetary challenge together with our partners in the civil society and the governments and in the industry. And this is something which concerns everybody at Bayer. So that's why we have made the 100 million goal part of our corporate goals and even incentive system, so everybody is aware.
And moving over to you, Mildred, what do you think needs to be done on your end?
Yeah, so I will reiterate what Frank said. It is the strength of partnerships. Partnerships is about building trust. As we build trust with government, with NGOs, with the communities, and making sure that access is not denied to anyone. I think that would be our focus for the next coming years. Yeah.
Thank you. And do we have some final words maybe from you, Miriam, that you would like to address?
Well, yes, I mean, I must say, since this is a topic which is also very much close to my heart, actually, I would like to come or build upon the question which was asked to Mildred. And I would like to come back to the equal rights, as I also feel that gender equality is often seen only as a women's business, which in my opinion, it's clearly not. And for me, it's more a mindset issue, which is absolutely independent from gender or anything else. And I'm very much convinced that to advance and to build societies where really everybody can thrive, we need to embrace the diversity. And creating inclusive societies where all genders or ethnic backgrounds, abilities and orientations feel welcome and are able to contribute, that is the foundation, in my opinion, for a sustainable future. And with that, thanks for having me here, and handing back to Inger.
Thank you. And I think that was great final words. And thank you so much for participating, Frank from Berlin, Mildred from Nairobi, and Miriam from Turku. And thank you all for listening. We will end this broadcasting with a small film that kind of summarizes our challenge that we have. And with that, thank you.
Every person deserves the right to determine their own future. In 1968, family planning was recognised to be a human right. This means that women have the right to choose when and whether to become pregnant. This right empowers women to seek education and jobs, raise the families they want, and freely and equally participate in society. Yet more than 200 million women still have no access to modern contraceptives. We want to change this and help the United Nations to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. We're committed to providing 100 million women with access to family planning by 2030. We will provide a broad range of modern contraceptives and funding to the UN, to NGOs and governmental programmes. We believe that every woman and girl deserves the chance to determine her own future. Together for health for all, hunger for none.